not only was I watching myself, but there was a greater force watching myself.
To wear the uniform displaying the Star of David, where at one time it was a symbol of shame during the Holocaust, and here a symbol of pride.
There was no trying to get out. I don't know of a case among the approximately 40 pilots, co-pilots, and some flight engineers included, where they said, "I'm sorry, I'm tired, I can't go." You had to watch it that they weren't too tired, that they could go, because we were flying war-weary aircraft over a maximum range distances because they were fully overloaded.
These people that had come over from the United States and South Africa, they had already been in a war. Some of them had been in a war for 4 and 5 years. And yet they left their families, they left their wives, in some cases children, and they came to volunteer to serve Israel. I think it took incredible courage to do that, just absolutely incredible courage to do it.
There were two critical battle periods. The first, before May 15th, 1948, was very largely against King Abdullah's Arab Legion, essentially in the Jerusalem area. There was ferocious fighting between this Arab Legion and the Israelis, but once it was resolved, essentially with the partition of Jerusalem, by and large, King Abdullah evinced no further interest in fighting against the Jews, and with the quiescence of his military effort, the most serious part of the war between the Arabs and the Israelis ended. Afterwards, the Jews were able to concentrate their efforts very largely against the other Arab forces. The Lebanese were not all that interested in fighting the Jews altogether, whom secretly they rather regarded as potential allies against the Muslim world around them. And the Egyptians had terrible problems among themselves. They were mainly concerned about the British occupation of the Suez Canal area. They always regarded the British as much more of an enemy than they ever did the Jews. So their effort was very limited. Essentially, it was intended to preempt the Arab area of Palestine, to some degree the Negev desert, to make sure that King Abdullah didn't get it all. And by the time, finally, that the Egyptian army got itself ensconced in this arid no man's land, which was the Negev desert, the Israelis, for their part, had fairly well protected their lines of communication elsewhere and were able to focus their attentions upon the Egyptians. Afterwards, when the Israelis were able to integrate their forces and to absorb that great cornucopia of weaponry that was coming in from outside of Palestine, they were able to focus their attention upon the Egyptians. The Egyptians, who felt themselves rather isolated, who were uncertain of what their real purpose was, and who were very swiftly and handily dealt with in a climactic Israeli offensive of December and early January of 1948 and 49. In that final Israeli offensive, it wasn't simply that the Egyptians were driven out of Israel. The Israelis crossed over into the Egyptian Sinai and thoroughly discountenanced the British, who had never anticipated this sudden reversal of military fortunes. In fact, they threatened to intervene on behalf of the Egyptians. They did, very briefly, and had 5 of their planes shot down by the Israeli Air Force. And for that moment on, one may say that the Palestine War, for all practical purposes, was over.
There's no Israeli family that did not suffer someone in that family killed. And so the foreign volunteers and also the DPs who came in, we provided the men and women so Israel could catch its breath.
There's no question the war would have looked different without the Americans.
On my first trip to Israel, when I got off the airplane, a man said something to me, "Are you Captain Schindler?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well," he took both my hands, and he said, "I want to tell you how much this means to us."
We flew with them and worked with them, and we took the brunt of the danger and the problems with them.
All of us volunteers can be very, very proud. We helped in the independence of Israel, which is a country not only for Israelis, but for all Jews in the world.
Every day in Israel was like waking up into a glorious situation, even at the worst of times. And every one of the guys whom I flew with feels the same way. It was the greatest experience by far in my life.
Even though speeches might be made occasionally in the United States that these Machalniks, in other words, these foreign volunteers, made a tremendous difference, they didn't make a tremendous difference. They made the difference.
I don't think the story has ever been told completely. Most Americans are very unaware of the people who served as volunteers.
The fact that Israel would be defeated never entered any of our minds.
So I wasn't thinking of dying. I was just thinking of doing my job.
We were all, in a sense, newcomers trying to wrest a piece of land for the Jews of the world.
We all feel like this was the most important event in our life. Just think of it, in 2,000 years, we're going to have a place where we belong, where there'll never be a sign discriminating against us because we are Jews.
What else could be a more important thing to do? What else?
I did one great thing. I helped build the State of Israel.